A very good evening to you. Welcome to another Newsmaker Live broadcast right here on DBS Television. With me, Timothy Polion. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be concluding with the clip that peaked. Well, you'll never guess who my guest is on this evening's Newsmaker Live. So set your VCR because it's worth recording this program. I last interviewed him about 6 to 7 years ago, and a lot has happened over the last over that period, to the extent that I never imagined that he would be appearing on one of my programs, either Newsmaker Live or New Spin. But my guest this evening, can you imagine? He is the chairman of the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party, Mr. Claudius J. Francis. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, team. I'm happy to be here.
I'm sure that people can't imagine that you are on this broadcast this evening to take questions from me and also to take questions from my viewers.
Perhaps they're not as surprised as you think.
Anyway, let's move on to the meat of things. How has life been for you as chairman of the St. Lucia Labour Party and the opposition family in particular, the SLP, in the aftermath of the June 6th general election of 2016, which the SLP lost, and I'm sure it expected it would have won?
Well, certainly no government calls elections if they don't think that they have some chance of emerging victorious. So yes, the Labour Party did think it was going to be victorious, but the electorate always has the final say. One thing I want to say, Tim, before I get to the meat of your question is, there's so much talk about, well, not so much, but within the United Workers' Party, there was this suggestion that the Labour Party has not accepted its defeat. I challenge any news person to go back in the history of elections in St. Lucia and tell me where any defeated political party has, as often as this Labour Party, conceded that it lost the election and has made absolutely no excuses for it. We never said the United Workers' Party cheated. We never said that the elections were rigged. We accepted that. As chairman of the party, the very next day I was on radio and on Facebook accepting defeat and wishing Prime Minister Chasney and his government all the very best. Truthfully, we expected in opposition to have had a lot of time for reflection, reorganizing. We never imagined just 1 year later we would have been back or so often in the limelight to discuss what has gone wrong with government.
But with regard to accepting defeat in the last general election, you might have taken a particular approach in terms of you saying you were on Facebook and you would have wished the government well. But we could not have said the same thing as media people, reporters and so on about former Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony. Traditionally, on the evening of the defeat of a political party, the Prime Minister was lost, would call in to either any radio station or TV station to concede defeat. He did not do that. And that's, in my opinion, unprecedented.
It is also unprecedented that he formally acknowledged the victory of the United Workers' Party granted on Facebook. But that is unprecedented as well.
Yeah, but how many people would be privy to him doing so via Facebook? How many people in certain parts of St. Lucia who are not computer literate, who don't know anything about Facebook, who supported the St. Lucia Labour Party, who would not be privy to that? Even they might be hearing this for the first time tonight.
Well, I am not sure that, I'll take your word for it, that defeated leaders have always called in to accept defeat. I don't recall that in 1979 for sure. I don't recall Sir John calling Sir Alan to accept defeat. I certainly don't recall 1997, the United Workers' Party calling any news. But you are in the news, I'll take your word for it. And if you're saying that it's traditional and he didn't do it, then certainly it was unprecedented. But that does not by itself translate to bitterness towards the defeat. It could be also, could be also as much as taking responsibility feeling that he had let the party down, feeling that he had let himself down. And therefore it was more introspection than it was bitterness. So.
You said earlier on that you never anticipated that the St. Lucia Liberal Party would be almost back on the hustings so soon after a general election in St. Lucia. Do you think that the SLP was just waiting for an opening, waiting for an opportunity to do just that?
Well, every good opposition does wait for opportunities. In fact, some of the best opposition create opportunities. But no, we were not just simply wishing for the government to fail. At the end of the day, we are all St. Lucians. If the government succeeds, yes, we remain in opposition, but the country succeeds. So we were not just sitting back waiting for the government to fail. One of the things, and you could go back on the tapes and you would see, for example, after 2011, people are saying that we didn't give the government a chance. After 2011, the United Workers' Party went public saying they give the government will call elections within 90 days. Then it was 4 months. Then it was 6 months. Then it was a year. So there never was a time when the United Workers' Party between 2011 and 2016 didn't look forward to the fall of the government. We didn't do that after 2016. We sat back.
2006, yeah, the last
2016,
election.
we sat back. We allowed the government to work. But the government from day one, Timothy, has been making error after error. And as if that were not bad enough, it was the flaunting of the Constitution of St. Lucia which caused the Labour Party to get back as early as it did on the hustle. First flaunt of the Constitution, Timothy, took place less than a month after the election with the swearing in of the ministers. You have two ministers, Honorable Dominic Fady and Honorable Bradley Felix, who are ministers in ministries that don't exist. The Prime Minister is the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Public Service, what the economic growth, economic growth,
job creation,
and finance. Yet, Bradley Felix is the Minister of Commerce in the Prime Minister's office, which does not have commerce. Same thing for Honorable Dominic Fady. Honorable Sarah Flood-Bober is quite okay because there is an External Affairs Minister and she's a minister in that. Unprecedented. The government promised that it would cut down on the size of the cabinet. It has the largest cabinet in the history of St. Lucia. There has never been a time in St. Lucia where every member of the House of Assembly is a minister.
If you're saying that the government flouted the Constitution, can the opposition isn't the opposition in a position to do anything about it? Is it unwilling to do anything about it?
Let's put it this way. On the matter of the ministers, you take a constitutional motion to court. All the Prime Minister is going to do tomorrow is just create the ministry. So there's really no gainsaying and going into court for that because nothing's going to happen in that regard. But you just pointed out to show a pattern of behavior. The Deputy Speaker, now that we are prepared to go to court on, and we have said so, we have sought legal advice. I think that should be coming anytime now. Here you have a situation, Tim, where, and I don't know if you remember 2006, then Prime Minister Sir John Compton had appointed a cabinet which included all of the members of the House of Assembly. I used to host a show then called Talking Points. I went on that show and I said the Prime Minister, that was Monday night, the House was meeting the following morning. I said the House could not meet because the Constitution says that the second thing that has to be done is the election of a Deputy Speaker, and there's going to be no Deputy Speaker, so therefore all the members of the government are ministers. You would recall that the Honorable Richard Frederick had called that show and told me that I was wrong. But by 9 o'clock the following morning, Sir John had written to the Governor General, Dame Pullet, to ask that Marcus Nicholas demit office. So Sir John did the right thing. This government has done the reverse. They did the right thing initially by allowing Sarah Flood-Bober, one of their own, to become Deputy Speaker, and within a week or two, caused the resignation to make her minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That is the seat at the highest level.
But that's not breaking the law.
It is
Because
breaking
the
the law.
Constitution says that when it's convenient to appoint
But
a deputy speaker.
the courts have long ago ruled what convenient means. The Interpretation Act itself gives you an idea of what convenient means. Convenient doesn't mean when the Prime Minister feels it. So, for example, we argue that convenient in that sense means when the House next meets, because it makes no sense appointing a deputy speaker when the House is not meeting. So it is our view that convenient means in that instant at the next sitting of the House.
That's subject to interpretation because
Absolutely.
politicians do that all the time. Remember when the Senatorial Labour Party came into office in 2011, the then Prime Minister said that as soon as it gets into office, it will be injecting $100 million into the Senatorial economy. I remember haggling over this issue with the former Education Minister, Dr. Lewis, when he's saying that immediately, we are haggling over this particular word immediately. So the same thing happens with convenience. So politicians do things when they deem it to be convenient or when it's politically prudent for them to do so.
I'm not going to dispute that, and that is why the Labour Party did not take the position that it is so correct in its interpretation that it's going to shut down the House. We said, we have a view, they have a view, let's take it to court.
Over the last year, the Senatorial Labour Party, in terms of being in opposition, it appears that it has sought to put its house in order. To what extent has it done so?
Well, the Labour Party got its act together very quickly. We followed our constitution, which says that whenever the position of political leader is vacant, that the first deputy political leader shall ascend to that position and then shall contest it at the next convention. That was done within 2 or 3 weeks of the Kenny Anthony demitting office as political leader. Philip J. Pierre was installed as the political leader. About a week later, he was installed as opposition leader, and he did contest the post at the last convention in October last year.
That's in hindsight. But do you believe that Dr. Kenny Anthony should have given up the post of leader of the opposition prior to the general election of 2016?
Well, as you say, in hindsight is always 20/20 vision. But there was nothing that we were seeing which suggested that that should have been the situation. Perhaps we were misreading the tea leaves. That's quite possible.
You conducted any polls on this?
There were polls, and all of the polls that we got was showing that Kenny Anthony was a more popular leader than was Alan Chastanet, including their own polls. So there was nothing that was suggesting to us that we ought to have changed the leader prior to the election. But as you say, 2020, hindsight is 20/20 vision.
How much credit are you willing to give to Mr. Alan Chastanet for winning the last general election?
A lot of credit. A lot of credit. You don't move from 11-6 one way to 11-6 the other way if the leader does not play a critical role. In fact, St. Lucia's politics is leader-centric. We still have the leadership as the focal point of our politics in St. Lucia. So the leader does play a part, and one has to give Mr. Chastanet some credit for leading the party to victory.
You think he was underestimated?
I don't know that he was underestimated.
By the SLP?
I think perhaps the SLP may have focused too much on him, not underestimate him. I think that we made him a feature he ought not to have been. So perhaps we were overestimating him by making him as much of a feature as we did.
But don't you think that he also proved to be a formidable force, even before leading the United Workers' Party into election by winning the leadership of the United Workers' Party on several occasions?
No, I think the leadership of the United Workers' Party is something entirely different. But as much credit as one wants to give to Mr. Chastanet, I believe, from my own point of view, that the real turning point of the election came when peace was made with Stephenson King. I think had Mr. Chastanet gone to the election, absent of that amalgamation with Stephenson King, the Labour Party would have won.
What does that say about the Senatorial Labour Party, therefore? when the United Workers' Party was in such disarray. From my vantage point at the time, I felt that not even Mr. King getting back into the fold would have made a difference. And it did.
The United Workers' Party has one thing that has never deserted it, that no matter what its problems are in between elections, they always, to use one of your favorite words, they always coalesce close to elections and have a united front at elections. That has always been the case. So they were very united in what they were doing.
But you think people are more forgiving of the United Workers' Party as opposed to being forgiving of the SFP?
Generally, yes. Generally, yeah. I think so.
What is the...
I think they hold, because the Labour Party itself holds the party and its members to such a high standard that the electorate does. I mean, the things that no Labour Party could have gotten away with, the things that the United Workers' Party got away with between 2006 and 2011. Any Labour Party would have fallen 4 times. In this 1 year, no Labour Party leader could have gotten away with the things that Mr. Chastney has done in that year. Absolutely not.
And what are those things?
I mean, for example, the Deputy Speaker, the largest cabinet, the recent budget debate. I mean, unheard of, that unprecedented, that you just adjourn for a month and a half, almost.
But if it is beyond your control, if you must adjourn.
For a month and a half?
If you must adjourn, I'm not saying...
I mean,
I'm
and a
not
budget
taking issue with the month and a half interregnum. Or
no, I'm saying that, yes, you can adjourn, but for a month and a half, when the country, you've reduced the VAT by 2.5%, so you have reduced your income by 50 million, but you have replaced a lot of that 50 million with other taxes which cannot take effect until that budget is passed, except of course for the gas price tax, which can be done by statutory instrument. So how do you justify adjourning for 40 days, a budget debate? How do you do that?
Don't you think that he holding the cards, he can make that determination? Because
he certainly can, and as he has. But we're saying it's arrogant, it's mischievous, and it's dangerous.
But what really caused that was the cat and mouse game being played between the two sides, as to who should speak, who should make a contribution.
That's not quite true, because prior to the adjournment, an agreement had been arrived at between the Labour Party and the Speaker of the House that following this the adjournment on that day, the Labour Party would open the debate the following day, and thereafter to be 1-1-1-1. And so, in fact, you must look at the tape and see the look of disbelief on the Speaker's face when the Prime Minister called for the adjournment, because the Speaker knew that she had an agreement with the Labour Party.
Yes, she had an agreement with the Labour Party and the opposition MPs. But as far as I'm aware, is that who catches the eye of the Speaker will speak.
Yes, but you're saying that it was agreed that the United Workers' Party person would speak, and the person did speak in the person of, was it the Minister of Education?
Dr. Rigobert.
And then there should have been an adjournment to be followed the following day with the Labour Party speaking. And then Guy Joseph, the Honourable Guy Joseph, got up and spoke, and then there was the adjournment immediately after that.
Should there be a fixed procedure to address that issue? Because along the way, as we make mistakes, as things do not pan out the way we plan, we should make adjustments?
Well, it's difficult to make those kind of adjustments in that, because you don't know what the configuration of the House is going to be. If it's 14-3, are you going to say that it's okay for 1-1-1-1-1-1 and then 11? It doesn't make for good debate. So there has to be a give and take, and this is the first time there has not been that give and take. But let's go back a couple of years, Timothy. There has been a case where when nobody caught the Speaker's eye, the Speaker closed the debate, as he ought to, by calling on the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to close the debate. When he did that in Sir John, at least 6 government ministers had not yet spoken, including Ira Devine, Louis George, I can't remember all of them, but 6 ministers had not spoken in that budget debate. So the speaker, if nobody catches eye, calls on the prime minister to rebut and close the debate. That's what should happen. So there really ought not to be any cat and mouse. The cat and mouse, if there's a cat and mouse, then the speaker does what the standing orders tells her to do, which is to call on the move of the motion to close the motion.
But generally speaking, do you think that parliamentarians are taking the people for granted? Because especially the elected parliamentarians, there's so much grandstanding taking place during those sittings. It's as if people are playing to the gallery. They know that they have an audience, and they're hoping that they could get the better of their opponents.
Well, let's put it this way. There is nothing in the standing orders that prevents the presiding officer from asking the cameras to be turned off. Nothing. The cameras are there at the instance of the presiding officer. So if the presiding officer is of the view that people are playing to the gallery, in fact, the rules do not permit you to speak to anybody else but the speaker. That is why you hear the words being repeated ad nauseum, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, Madam President. It's because the rules say that is who you must address. So when people start addressing their constituents outside, the speaker ought to stop them. So if the speaker is not, well, I shouldn't use speaker, if the presiding officer is not keeping things within the standing orders, then you're going to have chaos. So if she's of the view that people are playing to the gallery, it's open to her to shut the cameras down.
You're watching Newsmaker Live. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll focus on the stewardship of the government over the last year and get an assessment from the chairman of the opposition, St. Lucia Labour Party. What kind of assessment? Wait, we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching a Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with my guest. He is the chairman of the opposition, St. Lucia Labour Party, Claudius J. Francis. Later, I'll be taking your calls. In the meantime, we continue our discussion. The stewardship of the government over the last year. I imagine somebody will be saying to me, well, that's not the individual to pose such a question to. But nonetheless, I'll pose it to you, sir.
Well, one would like to give the government some credit, but on what? We were told that bananas would be exported to Martinique within a matter of months. Not even a leaf so far. We were told that Kenny Anthony and Philip Lecorbinier were responsible for all of the homicides. We have had more now than we have had before, and I am not blaming the government because I maintain my position on matters of crime. Crime is everybody's business, but as the lawyers would say, if they open the door, then the judge must allow the defense to put his foot in. And they opened the door by making crime something that could have been stopped by Lecorbinier and Kenny Anthony. Well, there's a national security minister, there's a prime minister, but the homicide rate 26 this year, and between elections and last year another 20-something, so an unprecedented level, but I don't blame them. But I'm saying they were saying, and the same standards that they were judging the Labour Party by, they ought to be judging themselves by that. That's one. Secondly, the Prime Minister was quick to talk about his 2
But before you continue, on the crime situation and crime problem in St. Lucia, don't you think that the government can easily say to you that it inherited that problem? It inherited it from the St. Lucia Labour Party. Well, crime has been an issue for quite some time now, and even even when the SLP came into office in '97, I tell you that crime has been a problem before, and when it came back in 2006,
crime is always a problem.
Right.
But if what they inherited from the Labour Party was a homicide rate of a particular level, it has almost doubled. So you can't inherit the double. It happened under you. Again, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying it's their fault. There was a time when they were saying every suicide in St. Lucia is Alvina Reynolds' fault. It was unemployment fault. Never mind, we were showing statistically that several of the people who were committing suicide were gainfully employed. It was still an unemployment problem as far as they were concerned because they were blaming the Labour Party. Nothing has changed. But I was saying the Prime Minister said as a campaign promise a reduction of 2.5% in VAT. The prices in the supermarket have actually gone up. Because what the Prime Minister did not reckon on was, yes, he has control over the VAT, but he doesn't have control over the price of goods except if they are price controlled. So the merchants who are already accustomed to selling their goods at $5, notwithstanding the 2.5% reduction, still sold at $5 and got a higher markup on the goods. The most egregious of them all, petrol prices. They were on this show and every other show saying that Kenny Anthony was making, they actually gave a figure, $6.80 per gallon. That's what they were saying. The Prime Minister said, upon being appointed Prime Minister, that he has already signed a document for the reduction. Going to find out, petrol prices went up. Then you had the minister in the Ministry of Finance being interviewed and asked, well, what about a 680? He said, this is the first time I'm hearing that. Could you believe that? The Minister for Commerce, Bradley Felix, was interviewed and asked, well, what about a 680? And to his credit, he spoke bluntly and truthfully, and he said, no Prime Minister controls the price of oil. But they didn't know that when they were in opposition. They were saying this Kenny Anthony. But here's the worst. The Labour Party increased the licenses. And the motoring public were told that the Labour Party is going to cripple them. And when the government gets in, they're going to reduce the licenses by 50%. They eventually came back to say it wasn't that wasn't what they said, that what they said they were going to reduce was the increase. But let's buy that. Let's accept that, although that's not true. But let's accept it. They reduced that. The reduction, the largest reduction any motorist would have gotten would be around $500. What do? They turn around and increase the excise tax by $1.50 or 60%. $1.50 or 60%. What that would mean, Timothy, is that any bus driver who plies from Soisel to Castries, from Soufrière to Castries, is going to pay an additional $7,000 in petrol just on the 150 alone a year to save $500. So you do the maths.
But that's what governments do. They give with one hand and take with another.
But this government was promising reduction in taxes, reduction in taxes, reduction in taxes. But we haven't had that. We have had a 60% unprecedented. It was supposed to have been in place this week, the 1st. But they couldn't afford to put it. It's now being deferred to July, presumably because with the climate change withdrawal by the US, they're presuming that coal and oil will increase. But that's not going to happen because Russia and Saudi Arabia last month agreed to keep reductions going. So we're going to have an increase in prices normally. Add that to the 150. And
but can you really say that? Because fracking will come into play in the United States, definitely. And the U.S. will be less dependent, I imagine, on petrol from Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, etc.
But fracking can only take place if oil goes below a certain level. If oil goes above a certain level. Because once oil is at a particular level, fracking is not economical.
It becomes too expensive.
Absolutely. So, and it is at that point now where fracking is uneconomical. And Saudi Arabia and Russia are saying, we're keeping it at that level. So fracking is not in play.
But governments in opposition do make promises, and when they get into office, they say that, well, they did not envisage that the situation was that bad. I remember the Senusha Labour Party also doing likewise in terms of making promises and saying when it got into office saying
such as what?
That the situation was
really
bad. I can't recall specifically, but I know that generally has been a theme that's been that's bandied about by politicians. When in opposition say one thing, and when they get into office to say that the coffers is in a deplorable state and therefore they cannot basically fulfill the promises that were made to the electorate. But generally speaking, you think that politicians on the whole, they deliver on promises that they make to the people?
I think generally politicians want to deliver. I think in some cases they are correct that the circumstances don't allow them to deliver. But I think more often than not, the incompetence of some politicians prevents them from delivering. And I am not sure in the composition of this government that you have ministers who have delivered. You take away Stephenson King, you take away, look at their records. Take away Stephenson King and what's the record?
But the people voted for those people.
Yeah, we accept that.
The people voted,
We accept that. But people don't always vote for the best. We accept that too.
So are you saying that the St. Lucian electorate is not astute?
No, I'm saying any electorate, not just the St. Lucian electorate. Are you saying that Trump is the best vote they could have made in the United States? Are you saying that...
Well, he won via the Electoral College. The majority of the people voted for Hillary Clinton.
The Electoral College that is the Electoral College that gives you... So he won the states that made up the Electoral College majority. So that's what we have to go with. So at the end of the day, one doesn't say the electorate is a foolish electorate. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that in casting the vote, they don't necessarily vote for a minister. In fact, the history of politics in St. Lucia is that people don't vote for ministers. People vote for individuals. If people voted for good governance, the Labour Party could not have lost the 2006 general election. They could not have lost the 2016 general election on the basis of good governance.
No, but isn't it a situation where people are saying that it was bad governance that was being practiced by the
we go back to what you were saying earlier.
And then that is why they voted against the St. Lucia
We go back to what you were saying earlier on, interpretation. What is good governance to the electorate as opposed to what is good governance to the politicians?
But you could share your opinion on that, but it's for the people as a collective to make the determination.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that when we speak good governance as politicians, we speak of transparency, we speak of honesty, we speak of trying to do a good job with the resources in hand. Perhaps when the people speak of good governance, they speak of having money in their pockets. So,
the St. Lucia Labour Party has been in opposition over the last year. How far you think that it has gone to change whatever that caused it to lose the last general election in terms of reforming itself? Is there a need to reform the St. Lucia Labour Party, implement certain changes that would cause people to repose their confidence in it once again?
The politics of St. Lucia would show that both parties have a solid base. So even if the loss the Labour Party had in 2016, it still retained the 37,000 voters that it has consistently done throughout. So it wasn't a loss of confidence of its base. The United Workers' Party, even when it lost 16-1 in 1997, still got 32,000 votes. So it's not that they lose their base. It is that middle ground that both parties have to convince at election time to give the vote that way or that way. In the last election, we didn't do that. But the government has done a pretty good job of persuading people that the Labour Party was the better choice. National Trust. It's treatment of the National Trust. I mean, the Prime Minister makes the wildest of accusations that a letter was written to Buckingham Palace by somebody in trust. He can't say who. He can't produce the letter. He takes away the subvention, says that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but he doesn't treat any of the similar type organizations similarly.
Like so what, the Archaeological
Society.
No, but I imagine that they will not have at their disposal the likes of the Pigeon Island and other entities through which they could raise funds.
But the National Trust is raising funds. The National Trust, okay, why doesn't he shut down the City Council? The City Council gets a $4 million stipend, and it has the ability to raise taxes. It has the ability to do a number of things. There are some things that governments don't always make profits on.
But with regard to the City Council, the mayor just recently said that they've not received any increased allocation. What he's doing, to use his words, is recycling
but
the funds.
The trust $700,000 was not an increase. It was what it got last year. So, and I'm simply saying that he uses one yardstick for one and another yardstick for another. But clearly the difference is that he has a personal beef with Mr. Tulsi. And he hasn't hidden his disdain for Mr. Tulsi. He has said so openly. He has said that he was prepared to wait because Mr. Tulsi is retiring in October. But I don't know. I know that there was a trust resolution asking Mr. Tulsi to stay on. So that let's see how that plays out itself.
But the SLP has not done enough over the last year, you think, to regain the confidence of the people?
Oh, I think the Labour Party has done a lot.
To the extent that the people, the majority of the St. Lucian public right now, in the absence of a poll, would want the St. Lucia Labour Party, as is currently configured, to emerge as the party in office right now?
I wouldn't go so far as to say majority. I don't have the data to support that. I can say that more people today than at the last election wish the Labour Party to be in office now. As to whether that constitutes a majority to make it a viable option if the election were called now, I can't say that. But I can say that when we go around, that we certainly have increased on the 37,000 that we had in the last election, absolutely.
But do you think it's fair to judge a political party or a party in office over a 12-month period? Is that sufficient to gauge the performance or how a government will perform during its tenure?
Well, I have news for you, Tim, that in fact in modern politics, it's not even a year, it's 100 days. They judge people on 100 days now, not even a year. In fact, the 100 days...
But that won't be modern politics. That would be drawing on Teddy Roosevelt.
No, in the 100 days before, people are just judging you on what you could do as much as possible based on what you said you would do. But now the 100 days is now used as the criteria to judge what you're going to do in the rest of the time. People are saying if in 100 days, but we didn't even do that. We're giving them a year, and a year is more than enough time, Tim, to judge a government. The government can show nothing for its year. Nothing. Not one achievement the government can show. And maybe you're a journalist.
But I remember the opposition United Workers Party was saying the same thing of the St. Lucia
And
Labour
we used
Party
to come out when they said that, and we used to come out and show
office.
them what we have achieved in that 1 year. They can't imagine the United Workers Party is calling an achievement a promise to do something, and they call that an achievement.
Is there a time you think, seriously, and I know we've discussed these issues and the issue on our various talk shows and so on in St. Lucia, for a third political force that is viable? Because come the next general election, the St. Lucia Labour Party was just removed from office 5 years ago, will claim that it has earned the right to return to the helm of the government. And likewise, the United Workers Party will say the same thing, the right to maintain power. And you have the situation where it's a toss-up between the United Workers Party and the SLP. And nothing much would change in terms of the philosophy and the approach. For example, it's a case of trying to remove people from different boards, trying to put your own people, trying to reward people for whatever assistance was granted in the run-up to a general election, etc. It seemed that this will not change.
What is required, Timothy, is a maturity in the politics. I agree with you, but let's go to those countries where there are more than 2 main political parties. Italy, 43 governments in 41 years. Is that what we want? 43 governments in 41 years because no party has a stable enough, a large enough majority to be able to and you can see where the economy is in Italy. Greece, same thing. Every other week a new prime minister. But where the two-party system is well entrenched, it's not a perfect system, but it's far better than where there's the multiplicity of parties where everybody gets a little thing here and there. And the reality is to govern, there must be a common purpose. And if you have 20 different parties making up the government, you do not have that common purpose. Even as stable a democracy as Israel, Israel has had its fair share of coalition governments and having elections far more often than the law requires. Again, because there are more than two dominant parties. So the ill is not in the parties. The ill is in the maturity of the individuals.
So therefore, should we put more confidence in independent candidates, as was the case just recently in the elections in the Cayman Islands?
And what's going to happen in the Cayman Islands?
9 independent
Yeah,
candidates.
and what's going to happen? How do they form the government?
Through a coalition?
Yeah, and then everybody has their own idea about what should be happening. It's not going to work, Tim, and I guarantee you that government can't last a year. Because there is no common purpose. There is not a common purpose. You cannot govern with a diversity of views within the one body. You cannot.
But people,
There's always a give and take.
as consumers, you need a wider choice. You don't want to choose between 2 brands. You want as many brands as possible.
And I don't say no. I'm merely telling you what the historical data is, that where those countries have more than 2 main parties, you have a government every year. Can we afford that sort of thing in St. Lucia? I don't think so. I don't see the problem.
But can we afford to be just moving from the United Workers' Party to the SLP and then
Has that harmed the British government, moving from Labour to Tory? Has that harmed the American system, moving from Democrats to Conservatives? It is the maturity of the politicians.
How has this benefited us then? If you say it has not harmed us, then it's suggesting that
it has benefited us in the sense, as I told you, that where there is more than 2 parties in other countries, you have had elections. So we would have been worse off, in my view, if a multiplicity of parties. That's the point I'm making. We've been worse off because we'd have had. I gave you the elections I gave you the results in Italy, 46 governments in 41 or 43 years, in Israel, in Greece. In fact, in Greece, a government fell because the prime minister was looking to have more stability, and he lost the referendum. So it sounds nice on paper, Tim. Let's have as much choice as possible. Let's get 50 parties out there. The reality is that, in truth and in fact, in practice, it doesn't work.
But you have stakeholders in the United Workers' Party and the St. Lucia Labour Party. Chances are, when you're in opposition as a political party in St. Lucia, you do not believe that you have to do too much to get into office. Just wait for the party that's in office to make a few mistakes, and then the people will see you as the alternative. Not because you have done anything to regain their trust, but because...
That's true too, but Tim, I mean, let's not be overly pessimistic. The reality is that we are a democracy only 38 years old. America's over 200 and whatever, and they're still making mistakes. You know, they still after 250 years, they elected the current president. So mistakes have been made.
So therefore, what is preventing us from being precautious in acting mature, even though we are young?
But we must first get the electorate to be more discerning, so that the respective bases of the parties demand better from the individual parties, so that you get better candidates. The politics itself must be less dirty, so that people, the best people come forward. The best people don't always come forward in our tribal politics. Nobody wants to know about the great-grandmother that they weren't aware of on a political platform simply because they put the name up for a candidate.
But why you guys do that?
Who?
You politicians, why you do that?
I don't do it. I don't know about the you guys thing. I don't do it. I try to deal with the facts, and if I think you're a bad person, I say you're a bad person. That doesn't mean I'm right in thinking you're a bad person. But from the facts before me, I think you're a bad person, and I think this government is a bad government. For example, the facts before me indicate this to be the most repressive regime that we have had.
Well, in the era of fake news, so you'd have your own facts, right?
I give the facts.
You have your own facts.
No, I give the facts. I mean,
because I mean the same thing would have been said of Sir John Compton. I mean, he was called a devil, he was called a dictator, all kind of things, and now in death, he's being seen as the father of the nation. He's been held
Well,
in high esteem.
I don't know that
He's been
the
held in high
things,
esteem.
I don't know that the things that were said about John Compton being a dictator, etc., have changed. I don't know that has changed. People see a history in hindsight. You see things. Your interpretation of certain things at the time might change, but I don't know that the people who held Sir John as being a dictator have changed their minds about Sir John. The fact of the matter is that there were things Sir John did that were dictatorial. There's no doubt about that.
Isn't it necessary sometimes that you be dictatorial as a government minister, as a prime minister? Because I think when the Senatorial Labour Party came into office in 1997, there's talk of a lot of consultation. That wouldn't have stymied Dr. Kenny Anthony at all?
No, I mean, look, for example, there was a talk about with 16-1, you have a two-thirds majority, let's change the constitution. But that's easier said than done. People didn't vote at 16-1 to change the constitution. So something as simple as, let's put it this way, Tim.
But if you're a leader, shouldn't you lead? Shouldn't you do
Yes,
what is
but
best for
let's
the people?
let's look at referendum in the Caribbean. Which government has won referendums in the Caribbean, even after significant majorities in the election? Look at Grenada. 15-0, the Prime Minister won. He brought a referendum last year. He failed on every single point, including things like where you and I would have thought, well, that's going to pass. Making equal rights for women, removing the stigma of legitimate children. You thought that would have passed. That failed miserably. So the people vote for the government. Not so easy to change the constitution.
Do you think that they're just so suspicious of the government on certain issues?
I really don't know what the reason is, because if they were suspicious of the government, they wouldn't have voted.
Because there was a referendum also in St. Vincent and the Grenadines
that failed.
That
failed
as well.
To change the constitution. So it's a curious thing. The referendum have not worked in any of the Caribbean islands. They have failed, even when they do not involve significant changes to the constitution. I mean, who would think that anybody would vote against equal rights for women? Who would think that?
But the 16-1, do you think that the St. Lucia Labour Party really took advantage of that 16-1 for the benefit of St. Lucia?
No, I think we could have done a lot more with the 16-1 majority. I think we could have gone back to the people and explained certain things to them. I certainly believe in the Crossing of the Floor Act, that we should have proceeded with that, because it's not saying that the fact of the matter is people elect politicians largely on party in St. Lucia. And if you have won your seat on one party's slate, you ought, I believe, to go and seek your own mandate. And so I supported that. I think there were other things we could have done, none of which comes really to mind at the moment, but certainly I don't think we took as much advantage. Well, advantage might be the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean, as we could have in the 61 situation.
But do you think that politicians look at things from a particular perspective? If they take certain decisions, it will haunt them in the end. So what if...
Oh, certainly. Certainly. I mean, look, for example, successive governments, from Kenny Anthony, back to Sir John, to Stephenson King, back to Kenny Anthony, and I suppose Mr. Chastney hasn't gotten a chance yet, have consistently gotten the increases in salaries to the workers in the public service, to the point where some permanent secretaries earn more money than ministers. There has been a Salaries Review Commission report on the deaths of successive prime ministers, Stephenson King, Kenny Anthony, back to Alan Chastney. Nobody's touching it, because everybody's afraid that if they give themselves an increase, that people are going to say you came into office for yourself. But the reality is, Tim, politicians, contrary to what is being said out there, politicians are not being paid for what they do.
So why they're fighting to be government ministers?
And that's what I'm telling you. I believe a lot of people get into politics genuinely to serve. I do believe that.
There's normally a lot of talk about corruption. We cannot escape that. Do you think that politicians, generally speaking, I'm don't to cast aspersion one side against the other and so on, are benefiting outside of their salaries? they're using their positions to enrich
I
themselves?
don't have any personal evidence of that, so I can't say that. When one sees certain lifestyles, one can draw certain conclusions, but I have absolutely no empirical evidence.
Well, why the reluctance for them to declare the assets when there's a legislation?
Well, I
calling
don't
for them
know.
to do that?
I mean, under the Labour Party between 2011 and 2016, there were record declarations from government ministers and those of the government. In fact, I'm still obliged to do it for 5 years after I demitted office. So I'm still sending declarations. People say the act has no teeth. That's not true. Again, Timothy, what we have is a situation where there are laws and people are not prepared to act. The last chairman of the Integrity Commission, Deacon,
his name is Jason. His son works at Bank of St. Lucia.
Taylor, Deacon Taylor,
Mhm.
did what you're supposed to do. Sent those names of the people who were not declaring their assets to the DPP. There is provision. It's up to the DPP. So when people talk about there is not enforcement, there is no enforcement in the sense that the chairman can't do anything, and rightly so, because the chairman ought not to be judge, jury, and executioner. What the law provides is for the chairman to place those names in the Gazette and in the newspaper to shame those people, and also to send the names to the DPP and let the DPP act. So, if the DPP hasn't acted, because I know Deacon Taylor did send names.
You're watching Newsmaker Live. We do for another break. When we come back, we'd love to hear from you. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll put the telephone number on screen. It's right there so that you can call with your questions and comments for my guest. Once again, he is the chairman of the opposition St. Lucia Labour Party, Mr. Claudius Francis. So your comments and your questions will be entertained. We already have our first caller line. Good evening to you. Good evening, contribution caller.
Hi, good evening, Tim. How are you?
I'm okay, sir.
Mr. Francis, how are you doing?
Hi, good night, thanks. I'm well, thank
Mr.
you.
Francis, question to you, please. I'm often sometimes wondering about persons coming to government as ministers. Do they go for a roll call before they enter the House for any debate session? Because what I realize happening, persons enter the House and does not probably follow the procedure of the standing order, as you may say. And I'm just left to question myself what's really happening. I can recall the last time we had a minister who actually walked through the perimeters of the House during session and said she was hungry.
She wasn't a minister then.
Was the minister caller?
She wasn't a minister then. She was just a senator.
Sorry, a senator. Sorry, senator. If I can recall, the term of the late Sir Daniel St. Clair, and I'm certainly sure even maybe the late Sir Alan Busquets, I don't think probably these speakers of the House would have told that nonsense happening. They would probably call or reprimand that senator or minister per se, because how the rules and regulations follow. So I'm left to wonder, do the ministers or senators go for a roll call to understand the procedure of the House before they actually been elected or before they come to face any session of Parliament? Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, caller.
They do, Tim. I know, for example, in 2012, Speaker Forster and myself, with the help of the Parliamentary Committee in England, we did have a seminar which was conducted by Wade Mark from Trinidad, the Speaker from Barbados, a Member of Parliament from Jamaica, and Matthew Robertson Rosie, husbands master from St. Lucia. I know up to about 2 months ago, I think the current Parliament did go through that. But the fact of the matter, Tim, you can't make people read. Every member of the House and every member of the Senate, upon being appointed, is given a constitution, understanding orders. If people don't read them, to be fair, you can't blame the Speaker. I just say before we take the call that the caller is not entirely correct in saying that St. Clair Daniel and Alan Busquets didn't have problems. They did. In fact, I can recall Rufus Busquets, for example, between 1992 and 1997, actually telling St. Clair Daniel, get off your the damn word, high horse, and St. Clair Daniel responded, what you want me to do, which is to get you out of the House, I won't do it. So there's always been that give and take, but I think this day is going too far.
We have a call. Good evening. Go ahead for your contribution, caller. Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you,
Good
sir.
night.
Good evening, Mr. Francis.
Hi, good night. Good night.
Yeah. What do you think of the statement Dr. Anthony made when Honorable Stephen King was Prime Minister, when he said that he was going to write to investors not to invest in the country? What do you think at the time? Did you support that statement?
Thank you so
And
much.
for now, what do you think about that statement?
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
Well, one of the things about that statement, Tim, is that nobody who makes the statement an attempt to corner Dr. Anthony speaks about the context in which that statement was made. That statement was made in a context where, in the mind of Dr. Anthony and the opposition, there was blatant and open corruption, and that there were accusations by at least one businessman that 3 ministers had approached him and asked for bribes. That was the context. So people just make the statement as if Dr. Anthony made the statement out of the blue. There was also another suggestion that another investor had come into St. Lucia, but was being asked some money, and that investor went to St. Vincent. That was the context in which the statement was made.
Good evening. This is Newsmaker Live. Go ahead, please.
Good night, Brother Claudius, Brother Timmy.
Good night
Good
to you,
night.
sir.
Yeah, just wanted to say that I firmly believe that at this moment there's perhaps the most pressing time for a serious third party to come into the whole political landscape in St. Lucia. You know, we have two parties, and from what I understand from a friend of mine, the two parties we have right now is the Labour Party, St. Lucia Labour Party, and a St. Lucia Labour Party, United Workers Party alliance. Because the person was trying to convince me that the government of the United Workers Party is basically an alliance of Labour Party, former people like former members supporters like Eubolus Raymond, Ozzy Augustine, Guy Joseph, Sarah Flood, even Mr. Honorable Alan Sharp and his father. These are both people who came from the SLP side. You know, so we have the SLP and the SLP UWP alliance. So those are the two parties we have right now. So we really need to have a third party on the scene. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I mean, the thing is, it goes both ways. Look at the person that the conservative movement in America considers the greatest president, Ronald Reagan, was a Democrat who shifted across to the Republicans. But again, this third party, let's go to Dominica. A third party was formed, the United Workers Party. They were the traditional parties, the Dominica Labour Party and the Dominica Freedom Party of Eugenia Charles. A third party was formed, which was a breakaway of the Labour Party formed by Edison James. But it just eclipsed the Dominica Freedom Party. So there's still two parties, just not the same two that were there before. So,
Good evening. Go ahead with your contribution, caller.
Good evening, Tim.
Hello.
Good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Francis.
hi, good night.
Mr. Francis, I'm listening to you. Okay, you give an explanation of why Dr. Anthony make that statement that he will write to investors to tell them not to invest in St. Lucia because you assume that there was corruption. But Mr. Francis, your government spent 5 years in office, and if there were corruption, okay, and the UWP was in opposition, why they never take nobody to court or bring nobody to a tribunal to answer question about corruption? And you know, because right now, to be honest with you, I listened to Minister Guy Joseph making some comments on the former sports minister, and like if he made this statement and like he never takes steps, whether it was true or false, if he never do nothing about it, I will lose all respect for Mr. Joseph, and likewise I lose all respect for the Labour Party and Dr. Kenyan Tony, and even you yourself as the chairman of the Labour Party, because if you so much in love with St. Lucia and St. Lucians, and somebody is squandering the funds of the nation, and like you never do a thing about it to either stop it or put some measures in place that cannot happen again. And now you come in on TV and talk like you know something. There was corruption, and like that's why Dr. Kenny Anthony make that statement. I mean, this is unacceptable from you, Mr. Francis, and like I don't even know how to call it. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis.
Thank you so much.
But Timothy, again, another misconception. Governments do not prefer criminal charges against individuals. The DPP does. He says the Labour Party did nothing. Not true. The Labour Party prepared an audit team. That team went around all the constituencies for over a year, compiled the town and village council report, sent a copy to the police commissioner, sent a copy to the DPP. These are the arms of government which take criminal action against. Neither entity acted.
So it means there was merit. Wasn't sufficient evidence?
No, it doesn't mean that, because the DPP never made a statement. We called on the DPP several times. In fact, Stanley Felix, when he finally made another call, was being chastised for saying that he was interfering in the work of the DPP, when he said simply the DPP should come out and say, look, I have perused the report and there is not enough evidence there. Or I perused it, but she never did that.
That report would have, what are you referring there to with Mr. Felix would have to do with the alleged extrajudicial killings?
No. The town and village council's report, where that audit committee found instances of what it claimed to be corruption and misuse of money and siphoning of money. The government can't charge anybody. The government took that report and sent it to the office of the DPP.
You have a call?
And nothing happened.
Thanks for holding on. Go ahead with your contribution.
Good night, team. Good night, Mr. Claudius Francis.
Good
night to you,
sir.
sir.
Something I want to say, when you talk about corruption, Richard Frederick came directly on television and say how Guy Joseph offered him $1 million.
Okay, caller, hold on.
And
Hold on.
Stevenson,
Caller, hold on.
I don't have much credit.
Well, I'll have to thank you so much. I can't allow you to continue along those lines. Because what you have is a lot of hearsay, and we really do not want anyone to besmirch the character of any individual and to cause us to get any lawsuits. We have a call. Good evening. This is Newsmaker Live. You're on the air.
Hello, President.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good night.
I'm good to your guest as well.
Good
I have
night.
two quick questions. Don't you think that there should be a ratio system to determine who speaks at what time based on the composition of the House? For example, now it's 11-6. So like you have two from the government side and one from the opposition to avoid this confusion we had the last time.
That's normally how it is.
The other thing, and I listen. Don't you think that the state should have, for example, a house or official residence for the Prime Minister where he would live upon becoming Prime Minister, so that we will not have state funds being used to upgrade the property of private persons, for example, the Prime Minister?
Okay, thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, Timothy, is a misunderstanding of government. It doesn't matter where a prime minister or president lives. The private residence is going to be upgraded to the point of having a security guard. It's the private residence. They go there all the time. In fact, the United States, as you know, Trump has actually gone to his own properties, both in New York and in Florida. That's just the way it is. So why the prime ministers don't live at, there is an official residence, but it's next to an airport. It's not the most conducive. So what they have done is to convert it into an office. Use has been made of it. So there's no real additional expense to the state when the prime ministers stay at their home.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good night.
Go ahead, please.
Good night. Yeah. Hi, Mr. Francis. My point I'm trying to say is that
I can't make out what the person is saying.
Resolution. No, and I'm not talking because I'm a...
Okay, can you start all over, caller?
I can't hear what you say. Well, I can hear, but I can't understand.
Okay, that's a very...
Okay, I am saying the point that Mr. Francis is trying to say to solution, and I am not speaking because I'm a Labour Party supporter. He is trying to say that you cannot tell the country that you will better the country when knowing that you're unable to do so. Another point is that you cannot tell yourself certain things as $3 and the Labour Party says that $6 to you. You know, those things you're supposed to be doing research on before. For example, gas. Watch how high gas level is going up, right? And tell me, Was it the Labour Party's fault that was so high? No, it's not. Is it the UWP party that the gas is going up? No, it's not. So stop playing politics about it. Be straight up with emotions, you know. I am a Labour supporter, but there are some things I disagree with on the Labour side, and I will talk about it if I disagree with it. But there's a lot of things on the UWP part that I disagree with. Emotions, they see it, but they refuse to talk about it. That's my take about it.
All right, thank you so much.
The last
thank
part
you so much
about
for
the gas. I didn't get the first part.
Yeah, but it was a little muffled.
Yeah, I didn't get the first part.
Okay, so wait another call once again for my guest. We have a caller line already. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good night.
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a contribution.
Go ahead, please. You're on the air.
Yeah. Okay. I'd just like to ask you two gentlemen, when governments are negotiating a contract, should it be done on the boulevard or the market steps or in private?
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Imagine you're referring to the DSH project. I'm just imagining.
I don't know what he's alluding to, but certainly negotiations are always done one-on-one. But that doesn't mean that the public ought not to know at certain stages where things are at. So I'm not sure the question was not clear enough that I can give an answer.
Okay, we await another call on the broadcast. This is Newsmaker Live. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, team.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Yeah, and good evening, Mr. Claudio.
Hi, good night, good night.
Yes, good show, gentlemen. Mr. Francis, for the interest of time, I would not be long, but I would not have hastened to add to touch on 2 points. First, the statement that the caller said that about the corruption, and it was the situation with the former economic minister Osbert Duvey when they had that matter, and then the second one that the caller brought again. I think I need to bring it up because it's this honesty that has come through for in the name of governance, so to speak. The gas prices, Mr. Francis. The current Minister of Economic Affairs keeps saying that the Labour Party at the time made 600, and I know that at the time
$6.
the petroleum president at the time, Mr. Everest Jean-Marie, refuted it, and then yet at this point in time, this particular government has come back. Well, they came back to power and has created. They have created another name for it, Mr. Francis. And I'm saying he has not been upfront with the people. And the other point that I need to bring up, in the advent of the mudslinging and whatever politics has become of, I think both parties are merely to be blamed for it, for what has happened. And I think they need to look deep. And it is something for both parties because I live in this country, I participate in the electoral process in this country. I believe that governments come to power through constituencies. And what that has not been happening in recent times is that the constituencies, so to speak, we have 17, and that is where elections are being won. Yes, fine, all that paraphernalia and everything, but it's the issues. And in closing, Mr. Francis, I dare need to see the time that when our political leaders and our political MPs would come and have a debate, and you see, like as you or team or Rick Rain or even people like Bernard Furness, that you could have that, because we have really been shortchanged. And the level of politics that we once had, I need to say, it has gone through the tubes. Thank you very much,
all right.
Gentlemen.
Thank you so much for calling, sir. Reforming our constitution, quickly. Do you think it's about time we do that?
Well, I would really want to sit down, because people talk about constitutional reform as if constitutional reform is the panacea to all our ills. I would really want to sit one-on-one if people were talking about let's change this and let's change that. I am of the view that our constitution is not perfect, but it is not as imperfect as people make it out to be.
Call that point. You have a call. Good evening. Go ahead with your contribution, caller.
Yes, Tim, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you.
Good evening, Mr. Francis.
Hi, good night.
Yeah, I want to challenge Mr. Francis on an earlier assessment he made, you know.
Go ahead, please.
He said the increase in the excise tax, the effect that it's supposed to have on a bus driver from Choiseul to Castries. He said over a 12-month period, he expect that increase to cost that bus driver from Choiseul over $7,000. I definitely want you to give me an idea of how you're going to calculate that, because I know
we have done the calculations.
Supposed to come with change in behavior. And if you're a bus driver and you believe that you're making free trips to Castries and there's an increase in an excise tax that affects you drastically, we expect change from you.
So you're going to stop. You're going to lower the number of trips.
Tell me, no, but from Choiseul is normally 1 trip a day. That's 1 trip a day. So give me an idea of how you came up with that $7,000.
We have done. I'm saying to you, we have done the maths, and I will give it to Mr. Polio tomorrow, and he can give it to you. We have actually done the maths based on X number of gallons that they use daily, the trips they make, and multiply by the 150 per gallon of gas, and it comes to that over a period of a year.
We continue to take your calls. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Hello.
Hi, good evening to you, caller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, good night.
Yes, good night to you, caller. Go ahead, please.
I would like to ask Mr. Francis a question.
Go ahead, please.
Why didn't he answer the question about where you're supposed to make negotiations when you're making a deal with an investor?
Of course I did.
Is it the boulevard? Is it the market step? Is it the fish market?
I did answer the question. Did I not answer the question, Tim?
Well, you did answer. Maybe not to the
satisfaction.
caller's satisfaction.
I did say that negotiations have to be in private, but it is not to say that the people ought not to be kept abreast as it goes on. But you can't just have negotiations and just sign. People must be involved.
Let's take another call. Good evening. Hello, good evening. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Good night.
Good night to you, caller.
Right.
Yeah, I want you to ask your guest for me, when will he be entering the political arena?
All right, thanks a lot.
He knows the Constitution, he knows the law, he knows everything that there is to know.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
I'm very proud to know as much as he says I know. That's one of the problems we have in this country, Tim. People don't challenge what you see on what you see. They challenge you, or you think you know everything. I don't think I know everything. I think I know a lot about the things I choose to talk about. But I don't think that nobody's going to make me feel bad about acquiring knowledge. I pride myself on reading. I pride myself on learning. I pride myself on getting information. And I'm not going to apologize for that, Tim.
Good evening to you. Go ahead, please.
Good night, Tim.
Hi, good night to you, caller.
Good night, Mr. Cordius.
Hi, good night.
Okay, Mr. Cordius, you remember that saying of Sir John, by any means necessary, clear the road? Remember the time of the strike action by the farmers?
The Banana Salvation Committee.
You remember that?
I remember some statements to that effect.
Yes. Now I realize that the Labour Party is just doing the same. By any means necessary, they're going to stop Mr. Theo Aking. What is this thing happening there? Why don't the Labour Party accept defeat?
But how do you equate what the Labour Party is doing there? Everything we have done, we are doing within the Constitution, within the law. How does that analogy you have made there hold any water?
Within the Constitution, Mr. Claudius, you think you can speak for every politician? I listened to the last meeting that was held at Library. Listen to Mr. Alva Baptiste.
But what did Mr. Baptiste say that was not within?
That even if he have to resign as a minister in the Labour Party and to fight for, you think he's fighting for his country or he's fighting for the party?
But you're taking issue with the statement without giving me any reason for that issue.
Yeah, but hold on. Yeah, but what do you mean you're not giving reason? Because I find that project that's about to come down at Vieux-Fort is a good project for the Vieux-Fort people. But all I see the Labour Party is doing just distracting the government, you know. That's all I see.
Okay.
And I heard another minister, he lost his seat. He didn't win the election. He went up against Mr. Chasney, saying that Mr. Chasney has done nothing for those children that are graduating from school. But if the Labour Party is fighting every project that is coming on screen, how do you expect Mr. Chasney to put anything for the people, for the youth that are leaving school? Come on, Claudia.
The Labour Party is not fighting DSH as a project. The Labour Party is fighting DSH in its current form.
Listen, you are not fighting DSH at its current form. You all just do not want DSH because DSH is not coming out on the leadership of the St. Lucia Labour Party. You understand? Because Mr. Tioking said when he sent out his application to the St. Lucia Labour Party, they disregarded his application. Now it's up to work with the United Workers' Party, and you all are just fighting from every corner.
But Tim, that's not quite true because the Labour Party is on record as saying it held at least 2 stakeholder meetings with the trust and other organizations. So that's not true to say that they didn't respond or that they just threw it out. That's not true.
Final comment from you, caller? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. We await another call. Once again, this is Newsmaker Live. We'll take at least 2 more calls. Good evening. Please go ahead with your contribution, caller.
Hello, good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you.
Tim, there is something I want to know. Can a citizen take the government to court for certain actions they do?
For certain actions?
Yeah, and something I want to ask again. Is there any law that is there when government ministers embezzle or do wrongdoings that they can go to jail or find themselves in prison for it?
Okay, thank you so much. Of course, yeah.
Well, of course. First of all, the first one about citizens. In fact, a very significant ruling came out of the Privy Council 2 weeks ago in Trinidad and Tobago, where a private citizen took the government to court on a matter that was not even affecting him.
And former government minister?
No. Former head of the Public Service, Reginald Dumas.
Okay.
And the Privy Council ruled that every citizen has a right, even when things don't affect them privately, to proceed. So that's a yes. And secondly, government ministers are citizens, and the criminal code applies to them as equally as it does to any private citizen.
Final call. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Jim. Good evening, Mr. Francis.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
Okay, there is something I would like to ask Mr. Francis. The question that I have is to do with the price of gas. When the Labour Party was charging the price the gas was at a time when the prices were like $40 a barrel in the States, and they said there were no hidden taxes and stuff, what was the minibus drivers losing? What amount of money were they losing at that time?
I don't quite understand the question. Because the fact of the matter is that the Labour Party never made more than $2.50 in excise tax from the time it got into office in 2011 to the time it demitted office in 2016.
But Mr. Shari and Mr. Jamari said that they were not the ones making the extra money. So where were the monies going to? And you guys said it was because of the pass-through mechanism.
Mr. Jamari never said they were not making extra money because there was not extra money to be made.
If the price of gas, Mr. Francis, was at that price at the time, who was making the extra money? We were paying around $15 or $18 a gallon, was it?
The person who would probably make the money would be the person importing the gas. The government, the records are there. The government never made more than $2.50 from its entry into office to its exit in office 2016. That's a fact.
So are you saying that the dealers were making the monies without the government getting anything out of it?
But the government is getting $2.50.
That was the only thing that was being made. So if the bus drivers were paying so much, in comparison to what they're going to pay the extra $1.50
But when you say they were paying so much,
hold on,
where else in the Caribbean were they cheaper except from Trinidad and Tobago?
Okay, Mr. Francis, hold on. If we were paying so much for gas...
But when you keep saying so much, give me figures.
No, hold on. Let me just get to my point, please. If we were paying so much for gas at the time, and the bus drivers were not losing money at that time, according to what you were saying, why would you assume now they'll be paying an extra $7,000? So how much money were you actually taking from them at the time?
Timothy, I'm lost. I can't answer.
Because if you were paying
the
at
question
$15 and the prices of the price of the fares are the same, and you're paying about $15 or more dollars at the pump, whereby now you're paying around $10 or $11 a gallon. So if the increase, it might go up to $12. So what would the difference be in terms of what they were paying before? So how much money were they losing?
I don't understand the question. The question is,
Mr.
they're
Francis,
paying
the
$2.50. They're paying $2.50 in tax. They are now
Mr.
going
Francis,
to pay
forget about
$4.
The taxes were explained that it's going to be for the repairs. I have a vehicle.
Yeah, but the price of gas,
I've actually cut 6 tires for within a year, space of a year, in terms of the condition of the roads. All right, that's one. But if I was paying at the time $15 a gallon, and now I'm paying like $12 a gallon with the increase, would I not be justified?
But when were you paying the $15 a gallon?
At the time that you guys were there, what was the price of gas?
But gas went down to below $9 at one point in time.
Before?
But when it went down internationally, it went down here as well.
No. It went down after the match.
No, sir. It didn't. No. Sir, that's not true. The only difference between sir, that's not true. You are prevaricating there now. The only difference between before the match and after the match was the period of adjustment. That was the only difference.
Okay,
the
but
period of adjustment.
It made a difference, Mr. Francis.
No, well, it made a difference in that when it went down, it remained down for only the 3 weeks, as opposed to when it went up. Before, it would have remained up, regardless of whether it went down or up, for 3 months. So that made a difference. And because at that period...
It never went back to the price it was before.
But it had nothing...
It never ever went back.
But it had nothing to do...
It was $145 at peak.
But it had nothing to do, caller.
It was $45.
You were speaking without the facts. The only thing that happened after the match was that the period of adjustment moved from 3 months to 3 weeks. Therefore,
so that
where you had a high price, let's say of $14, that high price would have remained for 3 months. But because of the 3-week mechanism, the high price went down, because even if the price of gas had gone down within that period of 3 months, it would have remained at $14 at the pump for the full 3 months.
Okay,
but because
Francis,
the 3-week period
Francis,
came
I
in...
understand what you're saying. I agree with you too, to that extent. Let me just ask you one final question. If the price was $14 at that time, with the increase of the $150, what will the price be at the rate it's going now? What will the price be to anybody now? What is the estimated rate of gas prices now?
Okay, if it's what now? It's $12 now or $13?
It's not so much.
What is it now?
I'm not really sure. But
okay, let's say 12. Let's say $12. If the price internationally remains the same, nothing changes, then the price of gas in St. Lucia will automatically go up by another $1.50.
Yeah, but it will still not meet the price that we were paying when you guys were there. And
All right,
the bus drivers never got the increase.
I don't get that.
Okay, thanks a lot, caller.
Let's
take final comments from you, Claudius.
Well, thanks, Tim, for having me. I really thought we need to do this again, because I want to go into the DBP's office, because I heard Miss Nancy Charles, was it Nicole, who made the statement about a reduction in the backlog of cases. I want to challenge that. I want to talk about a number of things that have not happened that they promised to happen. In fact, I'm understanding that a courthouse is going to be located now where the Treasury was, which is the Parliament building. Now, how ridiculous can you get that you're going to have a courthouse in the Parliament building? When Parliament is being held, what happens then? So we want to discuss all of those things, but we didn't have the time. So thank
you so much for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live. Thank you so much for watching the broadcast, and thank you so much for contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked. Once again, thank you so much for watching broadcast. My name is Timothy Polion. Good night, and see you next time.